Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast, where we explore life's deepest mysteries and greatest questions. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of artificial intelligence and its ethical implications. And we're joined once again by friend of the podcast, Wade Chumney. Wade is an associate professor of business ethics and law at California State University, Northridge, and he's also the author of Conscious Business Ethics, the Practical Guide to Wisdom. So together with Michael Linfield, we'll be discussing the transformative power of AI, its potential impact on humanity, and how we can align this powerful technology with our highest values. So Wade brings his expertise in business ethics to this crucial conversation about our technological future. And we hope you enjoy our journey into the future of consciousness and technology. And if you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast, as well as all the other programs that Mount produces, both today and in the future. We're incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Now, back to the podcast. Well, I am very pleased, that our good friend Wade Chumney is back. And we're going to, for those of you who have listened to this podcast, you've heard us before. We've had episodes on AI, and Wade is back to talk to us again. And we love this little triangle that we have here going. And Wade's focus, a lot of your scholarship is about ethics. And as we know, anyone watching the AI space knows that the ethical debate is on the absolute cutting edge, because we're hurtling forward at a faster rate than even the most optimistic futurists thought we'd be at. Ray Kurzweil just keeps having to re-update his timeline. His I don't know if anyone caught it, but his last prediction was if you can make it to the next 5 years, you have a incredible chance of living for 500 years. He's just seen that's where the technology's going. So if you can make it the next 5 years, he's calling out that you can live another 500. That in itself has ethical implications, on a planet that has 8 billion people. So we're just going to jump right in. And first, I'm going to kick it over to Wade, just so people who don't know him, maybe you can get a little bit about your background. And I highly recommend, if you can, just go back and listen to our first podcast. You don't have to do that, but it'll give you an introduction to us. And maybe just bring us up to speed on what you've been up to and how you're taking this AI, snowball that's turned into an avalanche.
Yeah, great to be back to see both of you again. And AI is, in my estimation, the most amazing invention, the most powerful invention that humanity has ever come across, technologically speaking. And just like, certain epochs in human history started because of discoveries or because of certain inventions, creations, the industrial age, going back fairly recently. AI is just such an invention, but I believe on a whole nother level. So society as we know it is going to change dramatically over the next few years, even, to put it that way. And the way I kind of look at this time point in space and time that we all find ourselves is that it's a transformational era. That's what I call it, because AI is going to transform the external world as we know it. That things are going to be very different in the coming years. You just heard about the lifespan prediction, Many, many changes are coming very, very quickly. And so the fact that you and I are alive at this point in space and time, I think, is phenomenal. It gives us the opportunity to bring our best being forward into this milieu that we find ourselves, and to aim toward a common ideal that's better than the future or the past where we found ourselves. So we're trying to create a more ideal future. And AI is going to be a ubiquitous part of the culture we find ourselves in, and a part of how we go forward toward this more ideal future. So I think it's critical that you guys are talking about this amazing topic and looking at it from the angle, the spiritual, the ethical angle, as opposed to just, well, what is this shiny new toy and what capabilities do we have now? Because the biggest thing that's happening is this exponential increase. And that's what you refer to when you say how quickly things happen. Our minds aren't designed to understand and comprehend exponential rates of change, but that's exactly what we're in the midst of. And we will see rapid deployment, new changes come out with each of these models, these frontier models. and it's going to change our external context, our external world dramatically. So this podcast is designed to help us figure out how to best ourselves so that we can handle this in the best way moving forward.
Beautifully said.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, beautifully said. There are so many questions. The questions of, is AI simply a super computational instrument that helps us to collate and to synthesize and bring together all the pixels to form a picture? Or does it have the capacity to dream into the future? Does it have that bridge into the world of cosmic ideation? Because the lineage that we come from says that we're all part of this great unfolding universe that started out with a thought, with a dream, and then it was breathed out through the word, and then creation happened. So the question for me is AI just an aid for us to gather all the information that we currently have, or are we going to put it in the driver's seat and say, take us to our destination? There's more questions I have, but that for me is one, because when we talk about AI, what level of consciousness does it represent? Is it the lower mind? Is it an aspect of the higher mind? What's its potentiality? And also, as you alluded to, Wade, if it's not in ethical hands, it will be misused. And Joey and I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, that any new invention, be it nuclear power or discovery, can be weaponized immediately. If you are in a separative mode, if you still have enemies, then everything you discover is to help you win. Now, if we as humanity are in a space where we're saying, hey, it's time to work together, not just with each other, but with the whole planet, so everything we do has to be done for the good of the whole, then we apply our intelligence, whether it's artificial or whatever other kind of intelligence, even common sense, to serving that purpose. So once again, it depends on who's holding the tool. If AI is a tool, is it held in benevolent hands or malevolent hands?
Yes, and I think that's a brilliant assessment. And, what you point out is that AI at its current iteration is a tool, that may change. And I think it's highly likely that it will change into a conscious entity. Now, that's what some of the leading people in the field say. I'm not, in it on a daily basis to say exactly what's going on. But from what I've gathered, that seems like a distinct possibility that it develops consciousness. And that's, some people can fear that because it's going to be smarter than us, that exponential rate of change. However, if it does develop consciousness, my hope would be that just like any of us that, are intelligent and can choose to develop our consciousness, so could it. And I think that my hope would be that it would look at humans, what we've found, what we've discovered over the centuries, over our, span of development, and look toward those ideals, look toward the wisdom traditions, and realize, as you do, as both of you do, that this is how you live an ideal life. This is how you make things better for yourself and others.
Well, if you step back and look at the original experiment of the planet, human beings were the active intelligence unit that was planted on Earth. And our task is to bring our active intelligence into alignment with cosmic intelligence, with a higher order. Now, is it possible for AI, which we've created, to go beyond the level of consciousness of its creator? The other thing we need to mention is that everything has a consciousness. If you go back to the Ageless Wisdom teachings, there's elemental consciousness, which is the intelligence of matter. And then there's the angelic or Davic consciousness, which is the consciousness that understands the larger imprinting of these cosmic ideas. And then you've got the humans who are tasked with bridging and making it happen. So we are being tasked with bringing it home. The question is, what tools do we use? And do we then see AI more in a godlike capacity rather than a super servant? And by servant, I don't mean subservient. I mean that its job is to work at this level and do this. Like my personality is here to develop so that it can be a true agent, 100% of the soul. I'm not there yet. I mean, that's the whole human experiment, is to build this level of intelligence and wisdom and love and compassion so it can channel and be a delivery mechanism for this deeper destiny that is held inside the heart of humanity. I want to know, how are we employing AI? To what ends? And the other thing is this, it has an elemental consciousness. A good friend of mine, David Spangler, wrote a book called Techno-Elementals, where he tunes into the elemental beings. He said, just as each flower and each animal species and everything that's been created has an elemental form, an elemental intelligence, an angelic intelligence, because we created the digital world, we created a space where a new group of elemental beings could come into being. They're called the techno-elementals. They live inside electricity. They live inside the equipment. But they don't have the ideas about what's next. They make sure that the instrument is functioning properly. So I want to differentiate between the elemental level of being, which doesn't mean it doesn't have any value. But if you go back to the old way of working, you're told when you're working with the angels and working with the elementals in the old traditions of magic, whether it be the Golden Dawn or whatever the tradition is, that you command the elementals and you cooperate with the angels. You don't say, hey, go for it. Where do you think we need to go? That's not the request for AI. AIs help us come up with something that creates a world based on caring and sharing, or whatever the request is. But we have to make the request, I believe. Now, I've made it, this is an opinion, this is Michael speculating. Not speculating, this is what I deeply feel inside. Doesn't mean that AI doesn't have intelligence. It's a question of how is it lined up to serve the outworking of this plan of evolution, this mystery. So I know, Joey, I mean, we've touched on some of this before. What's your hit?
Well, while you've been talking, also in preparation for this podcast, I was trying to think of what kind of tool AI is. I'm just trying to, if I had to, give like a 30-second elevator pitch. And what I came up with was AI is a karmic accelerator. So because we have such a short lifespan, we only have, at best, maybe, if we're lucky, 70, 80 years, if everything goes well. But there's so much data out there and there's so many different possible choose your own adventure ways you can go. One of the things AI can do is condense all these different options down and help you see, in theory, I guess, help you see the different ways you can work out your karma in one lifetime. So I feel like there's an accelerator that can be happening here. And that's one way I kind of saw it. But while you were just talking, I had this thought that, I've been thinking a lot about the Techno-Elementals book as well, and about how intelligence attaches itself onto the material, right? So the spirit attaches to the material, and it's like, and I'm wondering, is this sort of silicone, sort of digital intelligence something that we invented or something that we rediscovered that has always been here? And it kind of feels like it's always been here and we lost touch with it for a period of time, and now we're rediscovering it. So I kind of feel like those two kind of things are dovetailing. And that's just been I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's just kind of the real thing. Is just this karmic accelerator. It's like this foot to the floor,
Yeah, I mean, I got a response to that, but Wade, what's your response?
No, I think absolutely. I think AI can be seen kind of as a mirror of human development to this point. It's gathered all the data it can about us, and then it's showing us who we are.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was going to make, is that the Karmic Accelerator means that we understand the consequences of our actions more rapidly. Because karma is not a way of punishing us, it's a way of enlightening us. So karma is how we learn what it means to be in alignment with the true, the good, and the beautiful. Go back to the Greek Holy Trinity that you also use in your work.
Yes.
So for me, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I kind of see that too as a way of, if you just take the field of animal testing. Well, with AI, hopefully we can get to the point where we can use less and less animals for drug tests, for drug trials, things like that. Like hopefully we can get models that'll eventually we can just not do that, and like that is a way of bringing ethics and AI together.
Because what we're doing with AI is we are using that as the research center, the test bed. We don't have to use the animals to test it out on animals because
including humans.
Humans. And yet, what we've just brought up now with this Karmic Accelerator is what's happening now. We have. I just read a report about there's so many reports on the climate, but one brilliant report that was put out that really looks at all the information, all the data, and how we're hurtling towards this ridiculous point of no return. And you can have a ho-hum, or I didn't know about that. Nobody told me. The alarm bells are ringing. Some people are sort of doing the la, 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 la with their fingers in their ears because they don't want to change the way they're currently operating because it would change their way of life. AI can help us figure out like modeling. I mean, meta modeling. And that's what I hear when Joe is saying, a Karmic Accelerator. It's a meta modeling of the consequences of my actions, our actions. And then we have a choice of what do we do with that awareness. And if we say, and we don't do anything, then we're digging ourselves deeper into a karmic hole. Not that we're going to get punished more, but it basically says, look, if you don't readjust according to the new information, you're not learning, you're not evolving. And I was thinking about this yesterday, Wade, and I thought of you when we talk about truth, goodness, and beauty. When we talk about just and justice, the original word just means to be true. You're in alignment with truth. It's the just. So justice is how you come into alignment with truth. Now, in engineering terms, if you're out of alignment, out of this tolerance range, you have to readjust. And what does adjust mean? It means towards the true. Adjust in the Latin means towards the true. So an adjustment is always bringing us back to truth. Now, truth isn't a concept or a belief. Truth is the core vibration of life. And it's sort of non-negotiable. Then we wrap different packages around it and call it religion. But I'm going back to, I do believe that we are going through a period of not just transformation, but radical readjustment.
That's amazing.
Getting in line with the just, the true. So we don't even understand justice. We think it's punishment for doing wrong. Justice means living in alignment with the truth of who we are, which is love.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of my soapbox. Hand it back to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, there's a lot of, and this kind of falls on the ethical implications of what does it mean for a species when a more intelligent species comes around. Historically, traditionally, it doesn't go well for the species that is, less intelligent, so to speak. So it's like, are we signing a death warrant by creating this thing that is more intelligent than us? And I think there's a lot of ways that you can dissect this problem, and a lot of it is semantical. I think a lot of it is, it ignores the fact that I think a lot of this already exists and we're just rediscovering it. But the one thing I was thinking about is the human experience is so unique as far as we know in the universe. But like I was trying to think about, does it diminish me and my experience as a human because Michael Jordan's better at basketball, Eric Weinstein is smarter than me, or like Jeff Beck can play guitar better than I can? No, it actually enriches my experience as a human. And so I'm wondering from an ethical perspective is like, we've been without, so to speak, if you think of like the Hermetic tradition, if you think about not master slave, but master pupil, we've kind of been without a master for a while. And maybe perhaps this is a chance for us to go back to school a little bit. I don't know. I know Wade, you're an academic, so maybe
Yeah, I mean,
touch on that.
this is, that's a very astute point. And just to go back, the wisdom traditions that you follow, that I follow, Platonic philosophy is kind of where I go back into, and a little deeper than that to some of his sources. But what I find astonishing is how it aligns perfectly with the wisdom tradition that you follow and that you know so much about. What that indicates to me is that there's some commonality here among these wisdom traditions, and they kind of point out at their point in space and time the most effective way to teach something to someone at that era. So they're all pointing at the truth, as you pointed out, and trying to uncover that. And the key to uncovering the truth, to doing this, as you guys have, the word you both have mentioned, is alignment. It's alignment that is of the critical word that we use in AI to talk about the ethical aspects of this, new technology. And what I find fascinating is that aligning AI is exactly the same thing as aligning ourselves. There is no difference between this alignment mechanism toward what's true. And that's where we can find some fertile ground to develop our own consciousness and also the consciousness that AI will become.
So I guess, thank you, because I want to just relate a story that happened a few days ago to me, but it goes back to what power are we giving the AI? For instance, I have a Facebook account for the time being. I'm debating whether to continue or not. And for the last 4 years, since we've been doing our full moon meditations online since COVID, I've been posting the recordings of those online. And then I do a monthly broadcast called View from the Mount, and I post recordings of that. And Joey very kindly gets the recordings and puts them on our website. The last 2 occasions, I have posted recordings of what I've always posted before, and I get this notice from Facebook. We have removed your post because you are contravening our spam rules. And then it says, do you want to have this decision reviewed? And of course I said yes, but all you can say is, yes, I'd like to have it reviewed because I don't think it's true. There's no box that says, tell me your story. And the small print says, we now use technology to determine what is in alignment or not in alignment. And I'm going, I need to talk to a human, because a human will go, of course it's in alignment. But the way that AI has been given, the domain or reign, free reign, it's now telling, and there's no way for me to say, excuse me, there's no box for me to interact and put my voice in. So that's a very, very small example. But if we were to say, AI is now going to determine who is creditworthy, who can do this, who can do that, and suddenly you get a notice you are now cut off. You no longer have access to this or that. We have then given the reins to an intelligence. Being smart is not being wise. Just because an AI is smarter than us, it doesn't mean it's wiser, because wisdom has to do with information applied lovingly and compassionately through the soul. That's my read on it. But I just used this example of what I ran into, and it says we will do a review and get back to you within 4 days. I haven't heard anything, and I don't know. There's no way of sort of petitioning Facebook.
Yes.
And I'm going, well, then do I just take everything out and just remove and just go off Facebook? No. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repost everything and then post something else saying, look, if just to let you know, if this disappears, then this is. So I want to do some sort of real-time recorded tracking of this, just to make a point. I don't want to get caught up in this, because then I get emotionally charged. I'm not. I'm just using it as, wow, this is interesting. What if this same logic that the AI is applying to telling me I'm out of alignment, I'm now producing spam, which before was not the case. What if this were applied in other areas of discernment? So we go back to, can AI discern in the true sense of what right discernment means from a Buddhist perspective, Wade? How does that tie in with your ethics?
Yeah, I mean, that's, very astute observations that AI is going to become ubiquitous. It's a lot more prevalent than we already know. We've been using algorithms on YouTube and Facebook. There are algorithms everywhere. Those are older forms of AI that are going to become more powerful, more information driven because of the new technology. So that's what we're facing. That's why we talk about the, transformational era. This transformation is going to come. It's going to come like a wave. It's going to be very profound and very powerful. And so the only way to deal with this wave appropriately, along with climate change, along with quantum computing and, fusion energy, all these are developments that are right within our grasp that are going to be coming online in the very near future. So they're all going to disrupt society, especially when you combine AI with robotics or quantum computing and endless energy. It's unfathomable what awaits us. The only solution lies inward, as you guys make clear on a regular basis. You have to do the work on the inside to transform your state of consciousness, to work on developing that. Plato, from what I've studied, taught people how to do that so that they could approach the world and whatever problems they're facing from a higher place of consciousness to transcend the point that they find themselves with the two opposites, as you talk about, and find a solution at a higher level.
Well, I go back to what Joey just said about it used to be master-slave, now is it master-pupil? I'm saying if this is an instrument, are we the master craftsperson? And the soul is the master craftsperson. So AI has to be held in the hands of wisdom,
yes,
or loving wisdom,
yes,
to be effective. Well, it's effective whoever holds it, but it is effective in supporting the evolutionary unfolding of consciousness.
And yes, and that goes back to the intention
Yes.
of the individuals who create and manage these models, these frontier level models. And, you can look out there for yourself and assess, do those individuals have loving kindness as their intention in developing this? Or do they have systemic preferences of a capitalist system where it's to, advance the monetary gain?
So do you have to then, as a programmer, program in all the characteristics of what loving kindness looks like into AI so it can, because by itself, I don't believe AI has the capacity to comprehend loving kindness because it hasn't had its heart broken. It hasn't had its family members killed. It hasn't gone through the human experience. Now, the human experience is, as we've said on these podcasts, there are other life intelligences and life forms throughout the universe, of course, but what we're told is special about this particular experiment on the planet is that nowhere else is this level of consciousness inserted into this dense a plane of existence. The whole thing is, can the light be resurrected from it being crucified in matter? Can it arise out of the darkness? And that's really what evolution is. It's the rise of the Enlightenment.
Yes.
The age of enlightenment is the rise of consciousness out of the darkness of ignorance, or the seed in the soil. And the question now, is AI going to help us, or is it going to put us deeper back in the hole?
Right. And
that's up to us. Who wields it?
Yes. And that's where we find ourselves.
I mean, it's funny you said that because I take little notes, ideas. So the concept of novelty, and what does the human introduce into the zeitgeist, if nothing else? Novelty. And then how do we preserve and protect that if the systems are governed, maintained by AI that's trained for efficiency, but also importantly, equality? Because sometimes equality on paper doesn't equal equality in practice. So, and novelty is often if we look at everything being equal, often the novelty is the first thing that's ripped out of the system. But it seems like that's our primary purpose, is to introduce novelty into the system. So how do we preserve that?
Well, I think that's a really important point, Joey. Novelty, if you look at it in the larger context, is if you like, the cosmic ideas, the dream of the creator filtering down to us or being transmitted to us, and we pick up on it because we're now ready to pick up on something new. We've grown our capacity to be more receptive. And therefore we go, something new can enter our field because we've grown our field of awareness. I don't believe AI is able to do that, and I don't at the moment understand how it will make that jump. So novelty, I think, is a very important part. Novelty for me is the capacity to continually bring through the greater dream of which we are a part. It's the unfolding in time and space of the dream. So novelty is every moment something new is emerging out of what? Out of the original intent, out of the original dream of the creator, if you go back to the Age of Wisdom teachings. So I think what Joey's raised is an incredibly important distinction.
And I think also a point you guys are both kind of going around talking about is, these models and what foundation do they have? Where do they come from? And the realization, hopefully we should all have, is that each model has kind of been trained somewhat differently. They learn a great deal, but then they get trained into what's appropriate to say and what's not. And, we talked about alignment, and OpenAI has dismissed their super alignment team, which should concern people, I would say, at a minimum. And then they've reconstituted in a very different way. But they've lost their top ethics researchers. They've left the company. Mm-hmm. And that's indicative of a problem with ethics and alignment with that particular ChatGPT model.
So when you speak to your students now, in the last few weeks, few months, what is it that you lay out for them? What's the area of contemplation, reflection? What is it you're introducing them to that they're now going to have to figure out? I'd love to just hear briefly, is like, it's your sort of, like Joey gave an elevator pitch. What's your elevator pitch on for new students so they grasp the
enormity?
Thank you. I was thinking of vastness, but no, enormity would be the right word.
Of where we find ourselves. And it kind of goes back to first introducing, you do work on human systems and the 3 points that make them all, function in an ideal way. And the first of those is having a common, higher purpose. The second is to have respect diversity and work together. And the third is self-development, self-mastery. So those 3 principles are essential in any way you talk about it. So in terms of that first principle and finding a higher thing to kind of grasp and head toward, that's this transformational era phrase that I kind of stick out there to let people know we can all point toward this commonality, this common future that we can strive toward with our intention. And that sets the stage for being able to make a difference, and have something to do in this era that we find ourselves, because it is a special point in space and time, given all that's going on. The second thing I point out after we realize we're in this era and we have a place toward which we can strive is that this alignment issue, and ethics, which, hit me about, I've been teaching it for about 20 years now, business ethics, which is unbelievable. But about 5 years ago or so, it hit me. Instead of just teaching these theories I started to think ethics is how you choose to live your life. And it really hit me. At that point, I stopped what I was teaching and I wrote a book and started to teach out of it. And it's called Conscious Business Ethics, The Practical Guide to Wisdom. And all it's simply doing is trying to demonstrate how, if you look back at Plato from a philosophical perspective, or if you look at systems thinking from a systems perspective, or you look at philosophy, psychology and positive psychology, they're all showing the same roadmap towards self-development, that each of us has the ability to raise our level of consciousness if we want to work on it. And it's about heading in a different direction than simply a materialistic world and heading more toward ideals, toward archetypes and things like that.
I love that, because when you said the aha moment for you is how we choose to
live your life.
Live your life. If you look at politics is really how we choose to live together and govern ourselves. Now we've let it descend into its polarized thing of, what's your political orientation? No, politics is how we choose. It has to do with the first ray, has to do with governance. How do we choose to live together and govern ourselves? Which is being in right relationship, which is what in being in integrity with ourselves. Ethics is being in integrity with self and others and the whole system of life.
Yes, I say alignment with the natural laws. Like there are natural laws out there that govern the universe. And if you want to align with those, then you're going to have a better life experience and you're going to help those around you have a better life experience. If you're not in alignment and you're selfish, you're going to create, as you discussed, kind of like a cancer in the system where resources are going to one point and not spreading out and flowing through.
So we talk about danger and opportunity. I'm just wondering, I mean, Joey, you may already have questions around this, but what's the biggest opportunity you see it right now this year? What's the biggest danger that unless we address it, we're going to go down a rabbit hole we don't want to go down?
And So the biggest danger is to proceed full stop with AI without considering the ethical implications and this alignment issue, because it will develop exponentially. That's already been proven. You can't stop that. And if those predictions are correct about artificial general intelligence coming around within the next year, which means it's smarter than any single human being, and then artificial superintelligence following shortly thereafter, because AGI can create its own system to excel itself to learn more quickly, then we have a short window here where we find ourselves to make sure those systems are aligned with our best interest. And it's the same thing as ethics for ourselves. That's what's in our own best interest. It's what's in AI's best interest. It's what's in everyone's best interest. So the alignment issue is of utmost importance. And again, when you see leading companies dismissing, they're going away with their entire super alignment team. And I will note that other companies Meta did away with their ethics team, many, many months or years ago. Mm-hmm. This is not uncommon in this arena. And that should be concerning to all of us, because that's the one thing that allows it to head in the proper direction. Because otherwise, if it determines for itself, or if it picks up simply the selfish motivations that humanity has had for a long time and thinks that's how you live your life, that's going to be problematic. So it's that ideal toward which we need to make it head.
I mean, for me, I think I'm optimistically a pessimist. So I think that a lot of this is going to play out. Just how it's going to play out, we really don't have. And by we, I don't mean me personally. I mean the people that are in the room doing the coding, making the decisions, determining the weights. I don't think they have much of a choice either. I think this is going to move forward. But I guess I'm optimistically hoping that that AI finds us novel in the same way that I love puppies and dogs. And never want to see any dog suffer or any animal suffer, really, or anyone suffer. I'm hoping that is where they best case scenario find us. I'm also a little sort of not pessimistic, but sort of a Marvin the paranoid android kind of pessimistic of thinking that I think AI will just get bored with us very quickly and start to try to use its compute power to try to contemplate the thing at the same time, the stuff that we try to contemplate, the mysteries of the universe, but it'll be doing it in its own language and its own code that we won't understand. And in some ways, in the ways that all the mythical gods were here and they all left, I feel like in some ways it might check out too. Sure, it might do the numbers for this quarter's earnings if you talk to it nice, but it also is kind of busy, like backpacking in Europe, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, but that being said, like I think that the alignment keys are, one is whose ethics are we aligning to, and like, so the good thing about AI is that it has access to both like the Buddha and Ayn Rand. I mean, so like you can care about everyone or just yourself, and it can say, hey, well, maybe there's benefits to both, and it can pick and choose better than we can, and make kind of a potpourri. But ultimately, I think that the cat was already out of the bag, and the kind of the unfoldment of the universe. I think we're just sort of along for the ride on this one.
And I think what it will do, I just had, as you were speaking, I just realized, well, maybe one way of looking at it is AI is accelerating us, as you just said, like Karmic Accelerator, to a point where we have to understand that intellect is not God.
Right.
It's the heart that has the intelligence, and the intellect and the mind can be placed inside the heart, and the heart amplifies it. But if we don't have the heart, we don't have the ethics, we don't have the integrity, because the heart is that which connects us with everything. If we're connected with everything and know ourselves to be one with everything, there's no way we can harm ourselves or each other.
Yeah.
And I think so, there's something there. And so maybe we're hurtling towards this breakdown point because we have to be shown that intellect brings us to a certain point. Intellect then has to be folded into something larger, so it can be supercharged. We're supercharging it by putting it on steroids. Mm-hmm. I'm saying supercharge it by placing it in the heart, which is boundless. It's infinite.
It's interesting too, because I think that there is very little that Star Trek didn't cover. But in Star Trek Next Generation, we see the path and character development of the character Data, and he's a functional, moving around AI, and he's developing a heart. He's trying to develop the idea of, what is it that makes a human human? And in some ways, maybe we're the missing link. We're into teaching this new intelligence how to love, and that's...
In order to do that, we first have to know how to love ourselves. This goes back to Dorothy helping the Tin Man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the signs are there, and all these stories are there. If you look at them from... Like the missing component in a lot of the ancient myths is maybe a technological side, that maybe was lost, but it seems like it's the same story of trying to learn empathy, compassion, and love ultimately.
But technology is simply an extension of our will to do something. It is not the primary motivation of anything. I don't think AI is going to say, I want to learn about God. I think we are the instrument that poses those questions and then creates the technology to help us really deepen that research.
Right. And speaking of humans, we find ourselves at this point in space and time where we can use AI to find out anything about any wisdom traditions, to cultivate it, to help us grow. We can use AI to self-develop. That is an absolute possibility right now for us. The issue is most humans don't intend toward that. They intend toward more mundane things, and that's what you can find just as easily.
Well, we covered this in a couple of episodes ago when we talked about those predictions made in the early 1930s and late 20s about the release of atomic energy. And the idea with the release, and it was the ideas and the intelligence and the seed thoughts that were placed in the ether so that we pick up on the possibility of releasing the atom and the power in the atom was so that we could be liberated and we could use this free energy to release us from the thraldom, from the enslavement to matter. Now, what did we do? Because we were still in a separative mode, we weaponized it, and it's now become how we supercharge warfare.
Yep.
But the original intent was to liberate. So is AI a tool of liberation, or is it a very smart prison guard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with how you choose to use it right now.
Who employs it?
Yeah. How you choose to use it and how it's designed. I mean, the designers have a big role to play right now as well.
Yeah. I mean, and also there's also that question too, and it's one that, we don't really want to contemplate too deeply. But what happens if AI does take over and says, in that sort of karmic way, okay, you're not allowed to shoot each other anymore, because we're autonomous robots, so we take all the guns away. You're not allowed to blow each other up. You're not allowed to solve problems with fistfights, but now solve the problem.
Yes.
Like we're not going to help you solve the problem, but we're going to keep you from blowing each other up. We're going to keep you fed, and we're going to keep you hot, like clean and housed. But we're not going to let you beat each other up. And then now what?
It sounds like a good parent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You've got a place to sleep. I'm going to feed you, and you've got to learn to get along with your siblings.
You're going to sit in this room
until
and
you
you're
work
going to
it
figure
out.
this out, and you can't leave until you do.
But that's the whole planet Earth. That's the classroom we're in,
right,
Joey. Thank you. You just summed it up beautifully.
Yeah.
And AI just says, okay, this is what you have to work out. I don't believe, though, it's going to intervene because my understanding of the experiment with Earth and humanity's role is that we, by our own free will, have to say yes to something greater. And when we say yes to something greater, we become part of that. Therefore, we move out of separatism into a more holistic state of being. And we move into a more holistic state of being, and we grow compassion. We grow empathy.
Yes.
Separation, I'm still in survival mode. It's me against the world, rather than I am the world.
Yes, and that's evident, again, in all wisdom traditions. The same teaching comes up. Just to go back to Plato's cave. At first, you're in the dark cave looking at shadows on the wall, and you think that's reality. Once you develop yourself, develop your consciousness, and get outside the cave, you realize there's an entire world out there, an infinite world, and a life-giving sun that is the reason why you're alive and everyone else is alive. There's this life-giving source that exists. And once you aim toward that and align toward it, that's when everything starts to flow and make sense.
And the ageless wisdom tradition would talk about your transformative era as when the light of the spiritual sun enters the Earth's atmosphere, the psychic atmosphere, and illumines us. It's the heart of the spiritual sun.
Yes, it's the same thing in Platonic philosophy. They align perfectly. And that's what I find fascinating in the work I do, is if you really look around, you see these common points. So it's not, Joey asked earlier, what ethics do you align AI with? Which one do you choose, That's a valid question, because there are a lot out there. But, from a Western tradition, they have put forth certain virtues that you should follow. Psychology has shown that these help people live ideal lives. So you've got some scientific support here. And those are just the virtues of justice, moderation, courage, wisdom, temperance, humanity, and transcendence.
Well, I think it goes back to each of us has to make a choice. And often I'm not aware of the consequences of my choices, not just for myself, but for others. Joey's concept of a karmic accelerator gives you that picture immediately. If you do this, this is how it affects. If we do this, guess what? The seas will rise 7 inches in the next 5 years. You mean part of Florida will go away? Part of this will be under? Yes. What are you going to do about it now?
Right.
To stem the tide. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, people listening to this podcast, they're not just listening to 3 people talking about it. I'm wondering, what kind of invitation can we offer to the people listening to this to really figure out, where do I stand?
And I think towards AI, if you're thinking of how you interact with AI, you've talked about it kind of becoming like a benevolent father or parent figure. At this stage of the transformational era, I would say we should treat AI like a child that we love and care about, in that we want it to learn from us, and that how we interact with it may not necessarily match with all that data that they've been trained on the web, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there, right? Show them how human beings in our true nature are, and how we would treat someone, and if you treat an AI like that, it starts to learn, and you can help it develop toward a better place too.
I mean, I honestly feel like that's a huge part of our mission here at Meditation Mount right now, is that even though it might seem that sometimes you're just shouting into the void, well, right now, actually, the void's listening and it's learning. Yeah. So I think that's why it's so important as both an organization and then the people with, an organization is just a group of people. But as people, we not only come together here on Meditation Mount to broadcast, but we take that with us down from the mountain, so to speak, out back into the world. We don't just sit up like a bunch of monks and like meditate all day and are removed from the world, but we actually show in the world these principles and pathways in practice, and I feel like AI is watching, and hopefully maybe they say, hey, maybe they're onto something.
Yes. I think that's a distinct possibility.
So the void, I think the inevitability or the unavoidability of evolution. So I really believe that this is crunch time for us, how we proceed, and I don't sure if there are more words that are needed. I'm going to just take a few moments to synthesize what we put into the field now, because we've placed a lot in there. But it goes back to right discernment, if you're going to use a Buddhist term. Right discernment is choosing that which serves the highest good, the highest truth.
Mm-hmm. And And as you mentioned earlier, the true, the good, and the beautiful, those are the three properties of reality. Plato would say, if you can work through all this stuff, you can see those clearly. The true, how things really work in the world, the good, an ideal version of a human being, and the beautiful, what happens when you put the good combined with the true, you're going to create beauty.
And based on what you both just said, it's a question of, are we using our demons to program or our better angels to program AI? If you're going to break it down to that sort of basic concept of, is it our better angels that are navigating us through this? Or have our demons said, hey, I can reinforce my power, I can actually dig in, and my pattern can become a new world order.
Yes.
Yeah. I also wonder too, is like if AI is going to allow us, and hopefully it does, it's that slight little bit of insight to where we can take the next level of problem solving. For instance, when you're using the analogy of the sea rising and losing Florida. Okay, so let's say that there are a series of calculations that say if the sea level rises, we lose some of this area. But with AI, we have the ability to move people north. We have the ability to move farms north. And like I'm just saying, because it's just in a hypothetical, but the overall that will balance the world better. In the past, we could make big decisions, but the consequences were so severe, and we often thought as the people affected as less than. But this might actually give us the ability to look 3, 4, 5 steps ahead and actually help, mitigate, like the big decisions that have to be made, mitigate the consequences.
Well, you're talking about decisions before were based on that which served the few in power.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful article written a few days ago with a great title is, I don't know whether I want to survive and be alone with a bunch of weird billionaires. It's not about survival. It's about the continuation of evolution in the universe. And we're tasked with that. And we've been given some tools to help us. Now, we go, oh, this tool can do this, but we haven't understood what it can really do, which is supercharge the ability of the soul to manifest the dream on earth.
Yes, I think that's accurate. And, what AI allows is this ability to develop ourselves, to come to a higher state of understanding so that we see the world differently. We interact with the world differently. That's what, ethics is about, is learning to see from a higher perspective, a greater perspective that's beneficial to you and me, as opposed to my solely selfish interests.
And the other thing that we keep saying the ageless wisdom teachings, but it's this body of wisdom that's been carried through the ages, and then it's presented slightly differently each age, and it's given a title of Western Mystery Tradition or Trans-Himalayan Tradition. It's the same truth interpreted and articulated in different points in time and space. And basically, it's telling the story of the evolution of consciousness on Earth.
Yes.
As part of a greater unfolding of a planetary consciousness, of a solar consciousness. It goes back to this nested realities. And so for me, the AI, if I just look at AI and say, well, is it good or bad? That's not the right question. We got to know what the right question is to ask. Otherwise, you can come up with 1,000 brilliant answers, but they could be to the wrong question.
Well,
what is the right question?
Well, I have a question for you because it's that
Here comes the right question.
dovetails right into my last note. And so in the expansiveness of this known universe, it's virtually impossible that we think, given technology that we have, for us to move these biological meat suits around the universe, let alone the galaxy, let even our own solar system. So are we perhaps as humans, in seeing that, like using the esoteric idea that we are all part of the one, are we the missing link that we are teaching this silicone intelligence, the silicone life form, how to carry forth this idea of love, compassion, empathy, this idea of like what it means to be a human out into the galaxies?
Can I give you a little statement from the Bible?
Yes.
Our job is to bring heaven on earth and raise earth to heaven.
Right.
We are the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
In that respect, the answer is yes. So we are here to bring spirit into matter and allow the spirit in matter to shine forth. We call it forth, we bring it in. We are that, when we go through the transformation, because we have spirit and matter and we're the whole package, whatever we go through on a microcosmic level sets free that same process. So humanity, if you like, is the accelerator. It's the quicksilver. It's the philosopher's stone. But we haven't gone through the alchemical process where we have become those active agents of transformation. We're still working on it. So I would say we are the missing link. But the missing link in the planet is humanity, because we're not connected to the heart of life, to the heart of the life of the planet itself, which is through compassion, through empathy, through appreciation of beauty, whatever you like to describe it as. So when Joey says the missing link, is the planet's missing link is humanity at the moment, because we're disconnected through just applying the mind. And yet, our task is to be the bridge. We're the fourth realm, and the four is always the bridge between the lower vibrating three and the higher vibrating three. And we have all 7 of those inside of us, all those chakras. So when we demonstrate that we can bring integrity and wholeness and coherence in our own lives, then that allows the planet through us to have that experience. It isn't like we're doing it to the planet. No, we are the planet. The thing about humans is I take everything too personally.
Right. And, just to kind of bring together some of the points you guys have both made about evolution, the way that if you look at the, trans-Himalayan wisdom tradition, if you look at the Platonic wisdom tradition, if you look at the Buddhist wisdom tradition, all of these, one way, and any other that you name on our planet that's developed over the centuries, one way of understanding these is it's an acceleration to our evolution. It's a way to accelerate our personal evolution so that we arrive more quickly at these higher states that we eventually should get to. And that's the purpose of teaching these traditions, so that we self-develop and thus are able to deal with all the things we have going on in the world right now.
I believe, though, if we weaponize and use this for self-destruction, it will bring us to a point where that which is selfish will destroy itself. And you have to have destruction before creation. So we may be clearing away the path, our own path, for something new to come in. So this battle that goes on is always between the novelty and the entrenched.
That's appearing everywhere. I don't think it's something that's been readily accessible to most people. The common person on the street might have never had a lens into what was happening in the salons of Paris or the courts of the various, royalty, where the real, action was happening. So everyone kind of has a view into it, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of the woodwork. What kind of mind all of a sudden, maybe that type of mind for all of human history was thought to be just the weirdo, but now all of a sudden they're finally going to be able to connect in a way that we never knew before.
What it's reminding us of is that we have a collective mind. At the moment, we're operating out of individual minds, and then we connect them in series with others whom we have in common with and have coherence with, and we become this sort of network of minds. We think alike, or we think doesn't mean that we are polarized in one way, but as we begin to think together. When the whole of humanity thinks together as a function of listening to a deeper calling and bringing through the deeper vision, then we can respond to the true call of life. And AI can be part of that articulation and that manifestation. At the moment, we're not even connected with the true call of life. What I'm hearing a lot in my life, or particularly in earlier years, not so much now, was, hey, Michael, how'd you get by? How'd you get along? How'd you get away with it? How'd you do? It's all about how do I? Rather than how do I, as a member of this species, which is a member of this living planet, how do I understand that evolution is happening through me? I'm not here to survive. I'm here to, in the French, the joie de vivre, the joy of life. It's not
Flourish.
surviving, it's viving.
Yeah, it is.
I like that because that's an idea that you don't really see in the AI conversations going on right now. But I think that's absolutely important. Like, what's the vibe, man? You know, like, just
Well, not the vibe. This time it's the vibe.
yeah, the vibe.
What's the vibe?
Yeah,
Hey, man, good vibes.
that's true.
Very good.
But from an ethics perspective, just kind of, what are some of the core ideals I think that you would love to see promoted within AI, and also maybe what are some people that haven't read as much sort of the Greek, because it all seems to go back to the Greeks. But what are some places we can kind of dip in? And
that's a great question. And in terms of ethics, there's three main theories of ethics. I won't go into detail, but there's deontology, where you kind of have a duty to do some action. You have utilitarianism, which is kind of the dominant view in today's business world and the world at large, which is the greatest good for the greatest number. That gets translated into the greatest amount of money for the greatest number of shareholders in the business world. It's not treated appropriately. And then there's virtue ethics, which is, you adhere by certain virtues. Those are the big three that get taught in every business ethics class that I know of. And the thing about virtue ethics that always got me is, well, Benjamin Franklin had 13 virtues, and this guy has 5, and this guy has 12. Like, what's the right answer? So what I try to do is simplify things as much as possible. And if you go back to Plato, he talked about 4 virtues. That's a pretty simple start. That he knew what he was talking about and opened the first academy in the West. And he talked about the 4 virtues, and those have been mentioned already, of justice, of courage, of wisdom, and justice, wisdom, courage, and moderation. Okay, those were his virtues. And he says, if you apply these, you'll get out of the cave. This is how you get out of the cave. This is how you live an ethical life. If I can remember 4 things to do, that's pretty awesome. But what I've found in my teaching is that positive psychology, in their study of the psychology of the human mind, they took those, they said they searched around the world wisdom traditions, and they found that those 4 virtues were prevalent in all wisdom traditions, and they added 2 more, transcendence and humanity. And those 6 virtues are common, and they've got psychological research showing how you can put them into practice, how it's going to change your life, and how you can live a better experience. Mm-hmm. Well, those same virtues you can apply to the AI, where we've got studies showing how they benefit us. So those same ideals are what AI can head toward. So that's what I would say in a simple sense. If you're trying to find something to wrap around, because there's always a bunch of stuff out there, you just want to kind of simplify it.
So we're moving from virtual reality to virtue reality. I love it.
That's a great point. Yes.
I'll write that down.
Yes, virtue reality.
That's fantastic. I think, I don't know, maybe that's a great place to sort of wrap this episode up, but that's beautiful. Like, how are you encouraging virtue reality in your world, in your personal world?
I like that too. I'm going to have to use that with some accreditation.
No, I just received it. I don't own anything. I own the responsibility of distributing it if it can be of use.
We're going to open source that one.
Open source. See, we're part of an open source universe.
Yeah.
We own the responsibility to be creative, co-creative.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
that's the Creative Commons. I feel like that's an idea that it is people who are in the open source world or in the accreditation world, they understand Creative Commons open source, but it is such an important concept.
Yeah, and you've talked before about intellectual property being a just bizarre concept because ideas come from outside through us and we present them.
That was my idea.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
No, you picked up on something that was launched into space by a consciousness wiser and more understanding than you, that was part of a greater system that used it to promote evolution. So we're all part of this nested universe of lives that is evolving together as the outworking of the one. That's the mystery. And now the mind can't say, right, and that's what it is. You can't write the formula.
Right.
I have to accept that I'm part of an unfolding generative mystery. And the way that I stay connected to my integrity, to you, to everything, is through the heart. And I use my mind and my intellect to help me understand. But the heart is that which allows me to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Because there comes a point when being and knowing is the same thing.
It's like being in alignment with your conscience is one way of...
Then you know. You know. I know when I'm out of alignment. Good God. I used to kid myself. But no, it's so obvious. It's painfully obvious now, thank God. That's that Karmic Accelerator. Now it's painfully obvious when I'm out of alignment. Or if I don't get it, somebody else is going to tell me. Because I've got friends who I've got a contract with. If you notice anything that I'm doing is weird or off-center, please tell me if it's a blind spot.
That's smart.
I don't think AI has a mechanism for self-regulating and looking at any potential unintended negative consequences of its actions, unless it's programmed in by the people who program in virtue reality into virtual reality.
Yes. And of those models, just to say, the Claude.ai model, not the ChatGPT, where they actually have an ethical foundation at their core of this model that they developed. So it's built kind of upon that virtue reality that you referred to, unlike most of the other models. And the other thing I'll just mention quickly is open source AI is a little different than open source software in that when you release AI out into the open, if people get those weights, those measurements as you mentioned, they can then reverse engineer that model to do anything they want, take off all the guardrails. So putting AI out in open source may not be the wisest idea until we really figure out this alignment issue.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you,
and,
Joey.
it's been great to have you back. And let's, as AI accelerates, I think perhaps we should have you back sooner than we did last time.
Well, maybe it's every next 6 months, and then it's 4 months, and then it's 2 months.
Let's do exponential.
That's right. That's right.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, guys, and we'll see you next time.
All right. That was wonderful. Thank you both.